Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Chaf Beis in Bava Basra. As we learn for Achim Kol Beis Yisrael and Sunnah Batzor Shivya. From the top of the page, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. Rav Meir Shapiro had said that a person from one town cannot set up shop in another town. That's unfair business practice unless he lives in that town or pays taxes to that town. But if he comes from another town, he cannot set up shop in the first town. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak's Moda. Rav Nachman rather says that Rav Meir Shapiro, who said that you cannot set up in another town. Let's say you had peddlers who would travel, traveling salesmen, peddlers who would go from town to town, and they would sell perfumes and spices for women, basically jewelry to adorn themselves with. You can't, the people, let's say from town number one, and peddlers come around from other towns to town number one cannot prevent them from selling their wares. Why is that? Because it's a good idea for them to come around. The Omar Mar, because we said that the Brisa says, Ezra Tikkun Lam Yisrael, Ezra, who brought the people back from Babel Teretz Yisrael, was Mitaka and made a decree, that the peddlers should be able to travel from town to town. They didn't have proper stores that would have all their stuff there in each and every town, so they relied on peddlers who would come around, traveling like the Fuller Brush Man, if you remember, right? They would go around from town to town, door to door, and sell their wares so that the women would be able to adorn themselves and make themselves attractive to their husbands. So that was allowed. That's it. That's if they're coming and they're going door to door. They're not setting up shop. They're not staying permanently. They're not setting up a regular store. They're going door to door. But to settle themselves in there and make a store, make a permanent spot, if the peddler was also a rabbi and would study, I feel like Boinami, he was also allowed to stay in one place. In other words, he wasn't maybe there permanently, but he was allowed to set up a shop. Kihada Rava Shaulul of Yoshia Rav Ovadia. Rava permitted these two rabbis, Rav Yoshia and Rav Ovadia, like Buey, the local, even against the regular law. The regular law said that you're not supposed to set up shop. You only can go traveling door to door. That you can do, but you can't set up a shop. He says they allowed them also to set up a shop. My time keep their abundance since they were rabbis and studying Usul Tarf Megasayu. If they'd have to go door to door, they would their studies would be damaged. They wouldn't be able to study as much this way, and it wasn't for their kavod. So therefore, it was better that they should. It's lower. I feel like right now. In other words, for number one, for their studies, also it wasn't proper for them to go door to door. It wasn't the fitting of the rabbis. So he allowed them, if they were rabbis, to set up a shop, not to go door to door. But normally, you had to go door to door. That would be okay, but no more than that. There were some people selling basket sellers. I see Bubble. They brought some baskets to Bubble. Also, the people in town said, "Come on, they prevented them. Said, you just can't come here and take away our business. You're coming from out of town trying to set up a store here." Also, the Shaila came before Avina Amalahu. They're coming from elsewhere, meaning not from out of town, and they could sell to out of town people. Meaning, as we'll see in a second, there was a market day. It was very common, even until modern times, that there was always be a market day. That was usually Monday or Thursday in certain places in Jewish areas. But there was a market day when everybody would come from the surrounding cities and villages and towns, come to one place. So he said, Ravina said, listen, these guys, these sellers, these basket sellers are coming from out of town. They could sell to the out of town people on the market day. If it's not the market day, they can't sell because they're taken away from your business. Even on the market day, Elas would be shook to sell in the market. But to allow them to come and go door to door in the city, they're not allowed to. In other words, these out of towners can come to the market and sell in the market to other out of towners, but they can't come into the city and go door to door. Again, it's unfair business practices. Hanamarai, similar story with some wool sellers. They came to the city called Pumnara, city in Babel, and they brought their wool there. Also, Bnei Masa and the people in the city prevented them and said, "You're taking away our business." Also, look at Rav Kana. They brought this question before Rav Kana from Pumnara. Amalahu, Dinahu Demakvilach. he told the sellers that the halacha is that they could prevent you from selling. Amulei Islan Ashrai b'masa. People owe us money in this town. We have some credit due here. In other words, we have some money owed to us here. We have to be here. We have to collect our money. Telling us now we can't sell our stuff, but we're here to collect. I'll tell you what you could do. You can go sell enough just to cover your expenses while you're here until you collect your money. Until you collect it and you've taken away all the credit. You did true. And then leave. Okay, you're allowed. I'm giving you a period of time. You can stay here long enough and sell a few things, keep yourselves going until you collect your money, but otherwise leave. Now a famous story. Rav Dimi min Ardov. Listen carefully to this story. Rav Dimi min Ardov came to the city. Isu grogers b'spinning. He bought figs in a boat. He bought a boatload of figs to this town. Doesn't say where it was, but he says he was from Nardor and he came presumably to a different city in Nardor. Came along the river, brought a boatload of figs. And the question was, do we allow him to sell? Not because he was only from a different city, but because if he was a rabbi, they would give rabbis first preference that only he could sell until he sold off all his stuff. We had that before. They would give rabbanim, rabbis. It was very common in Europe also that the rebbitzin would be the one selling the kosher salt or the milk or whatever it was. They would give the rabbis a way of having income because they weren't busy all day with business. So they were given a dispensation that they can sell before anybody else. In other words, the market's closed. It's just open for these guys. They have like a monopoly until they sell their wares. So here this rabbi, Rav Dimi from that dog came, bought a boatload of figs with him. Amalei Rashkusa, so the exilar came and told Rava. Exilarch is the temporal head of the Jews in the Golas. So he told Rava, Pukchazi, go see, eat some Rabbananu. If this fella is a rabbi, so Nagalashukam will give him the market. In other words, we'll let him sell his stuff before anybody else. This is what the Reish Galusa told Rava, the rabbi. Rava was the chief rabbi there. Amalei Rava Ravada Barava. So Rava turned to Ravada Barava, who was also an assistant rabbi there. And a famous rabbi, Ravada Barava, go smell his jar. That was a phrase for saying, go see if he knows how to learn. Go see if he's really a rabbi. If he's a rabbi, then we'll give him the dispensation. Go check out this Rav Dimi, who they apparently were not familiar with. So go check him out. Nafik went on also, and he asked him this question. Famous question. Pil shabolak fifa mitzvahs v'hikia derech habeis rei mao. What's the halacha if the way the words read in our Gemara is the elephant swallowed a like an Egyptian basket, meaning a wicker basket, and he passed it. He passed it through his rectum when it came out. Is it still makabel tumah or not? A basket is a kli. And it's makabel tumah, but is it considered like it was digested himself, and therefore this is like other excrement that he's excreting, and therefore excrement is not makabel tumah. Excrement is like stone, is not makabel tumah or not. Now this is how the question reads here. Tosfos explains that that's not really a question, because if the basket is intact, well, elephant's a big elephant, right? He swallows a basket and he excreted it. It's the same basket. And it still would be Makabel Tumah. It's still a basket. The question, he says, is the famous question that the Gemara brings down in Menachos, and that's really what the question was here too. He swallowed willows, and it came out a basket. Okay. Now, obviously, that's a pretty impossible situation, but in theory, if it would happen, in theory, he ate up a whole tree full of willows, and it came out in the form of a basket. What would you say there? Is that Makabel Tumah? Is it glolim? Is it like excrement, some Makabel Tumah, or it's the basket? It's a willow basket, right? It hasn't been really digested all the way. That's the question. So he told them this question. Now, this question is really broad. Tosfos brings down. It's the Gemara Menachos that asks this kasha, and the Gemara says it can't be where he swallowed a basket, because if he swallowed a basket, the basket came out, it's still the same basket. So that's clearly the question over here is, if he swallowed the willows and digested them and it came out of basket, is that like excrement or is it a basket? And that question is really not solved over there, although there tries to solve it. So he asked him this question out. He didn't even answer. Now, because he didn't have an answer, he was deemed to be not a very learned person. So Tosfos says, what do you mean? The Gemara over there in Menachos also doesn't give a final answer to this question. This is what the Gemara tries to answer it. Here he apparently didn't even make an attempt. Amalei, so this Ravada Barabba, who could not answer the question that, this Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi was the one who brought the figs. And Rav Dada Barabba asked him this question. And Rav Dimi, who didn't know the answer or didn't answer anything to that, he then turned now to Ravada Barabba in this town in Bavel. And he said, Amalei, Marni, are you Rava? I know Rava is the chief rabbi here. Is that you? Are you Rava? He didn't have a name tag. So Ravada Barabba made light of it. He tapped him on his shoe as if to say, like it was disrespectful, like a child, like you tap on his shoe. There's a big distance between me and Rav. In other words, Rav is the chief rabbi. I'm way, way below that. But still, I'm in charge. I'm better than you. You couldn't even answer this question at all. I am your rabbi, and Rava is Rabba the Rabbech, is the Rabba of your rabbi. In other words, you're way down the line because I'm below Rava and you're way below me. So lo naktale shuka. So they didn't allow him that monopoly, that temporary monopoly that they give to rabbis. Pasuk Rogos today, and all his figs went bad. Right? There was no preservatives in those days. He had to sell it fresh, and they didn't allow him to sell it, and therefore he lost all his money. Oscar he came for Rav Yosef. Now this Rav Dimi came before Rav Yosef, the Paskin Shaf Amalei. Chazi Marmav, look what they did to me. Rav Yosef was apparently the Tosef in that area. So look what they did to me. They caused me a total loss, right? Amalei Mand. So Rav Yosef gave a curse now to Ravada Barabba, who put him in that situation by asking him this question. He didn't have an answer. And he said, "You're nobody. You're way down the line." Amalei Mandalo Shayalu Nise the Malk of Edom. Malk of Edom, the Melech of Edom, was not only killed, but they burned his bones in a derech bezoyim. So he said the Rabbanu Shalom did not delay for the honor, the wrong that was done to the king of Edom. Lo Nashai Lo Nasach also will not delay from paying back for for the fraud, the wrong that was committed to you. The Sivkoma Hashem said that Al Shloshis Pishay Moab on the for the three sins of Moab, Al Arba, and the fourth one, Lo Shivenu, I will not return, meaning I'm not going to let him do tshuva. I'm going to punish him. I'll sorrow asos melech Edom because they burned the bones. So he gave him this kind of a curse that God, who repaid bad for the people who did something, even to the king of Edom, a goy, will repay for the wrong that was done to you, not allowing you to sell your stuff here. Apparently, why couldn't he at least bring it in and sell it on the market, with everybody else? They didn't give him the monopoly. Apparently, they didn't let him come in. I guess if he couldn't get a monopoly, he couldn't sell it. In any case, also that they burned the king's bones down until it turned into lime. So what happened after that curse of that Rav Yosef gave Ravada Barabba? Nach nafshe Ravada Barabba, he died. Ravada Barabba died. Now, Rav Yosef, who felt he cursed him, felt that he died because of his curse. He didn't really want to curse. He didn't want him to die, but Rav Yosef sort of took responsibility. Tosfos points out that he's going to have a series of rabbis now, Rav Yosef and Abai, and all these rabbis felt guilty that they said Ravada Barabba died because of them. Tosfos says, the second to last Tosfos says, Kol echad me'en ha'imosona, they were all moaning and crying, Shal Yodo Meis, that Meis Ravada died because of them. Shabbos Perak Shoel, if somebody's punished because of you, even if somebody wronged you and you were in the right, but they were punished because of you, not so good. You're not in such a good shape. If somebody was punished because of you, you don't go into the partition with God. So each one was saying, I guess it's my fault. They were like bemoaning their lot. I was the cause of his punishment. The Ana Latayosa. I cursed him. I gave him a curse, so I guess he was punished because Rav Dimi min Arda, Rav Dimi, who owned the figs and lost them, said, he punished me, the opposite grows fig, because he caused my figs, had I not shown up in town, this all wouldn't have happened. My figs that were lost was because of him. So he was punished through me. Not that I did it. It wasn't necessarily my fault, but it was because of me, right? That's a big difference between my fault. Rav Yosef maybe felt it was his fault. Rav Dimi said maybe felt it wasn't his fault, but it was because of him. That was a line that Rabbi Wein said to some shiksa back in the Yom Kippur War in 1973-74. Remember how there was an oil embargo in the United States because of the Arabs and the whole fight that was going on after the Yom Kippur War time. So there was a lot of anti-Semitism. People think it was only anti-Semitism. Now with this war, those of us who remember 50 years ago, there was a lot of anti-Semitism there too. Say burn Jews, not gas, all kinds of things like that. So Rabbi Wein was accosted by some shiksa lady, and she says, this is all your fault. You Jews, it's all your fault. So he said, madam, it might be because of us, but it's not our fault. It's because of me. It's through me that it happened, but it's not my fault. Everything happens because of the Jews. Abaye felt that that he was punished because of him. Why? What is that? What is Abaye doing over here? Because Rabbadah used to tell the rabbis, why gnaw at the bones of Abaye? Meaning, why go to Abaye's yeshiva? Go to Rav's yeshiva, which is better. That Rabbadah Barabba would tell people, rather than gnawing at the bones, like just sucking the bones of Abaye, to achlu bisra shmeina be Rava, come eat the fat meat at Rava's yeshiva. In other words, he was encouraging them to leave one yeshiva and go to another. It's not just something that happens today. It happened in those days too. Right? So he said it was through me. Now Abaye didn't say anything. It was Ravada Barabba. He says Ravada was punished because he would encourage people to leave Abaye's yeshiva and go to Rava's yeshiva. So Abaye said it was through me. Again, it wasn't Abaye's fault, but it was through him. Rabba Marnanishte. Rabba says, I am the cause of this punishment. When Ravada Barabba would go to the butcher to buy some meat, he would tell the butchers, he was standing in line with with Rava's shamas, and he said, I should be first in line. I should have a priority to get I should be treated first. Why? I'm greater than Rava. So Ravada, he says, again, Ravada Barabba was punished, he says, through Rava. It wasn't Rava's fault. He says, because Ravada Barabba would jump the line and say, I'm more chashuv than Rava, and therefore I should come ahead of him. He was punished because of me. What happened? What happened was a story. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Reish Kal Habe. Rav Nachman Yitzchak was appointed, let's call it the chief rabbi, or the chief darshan in that town. The kala would be where they would learn. Like we have also Yarchei Kala. He would darshan. Every day, every time when he went up before he preached, before he went to darshan and the kala, Marit Bahadei Ravada Barabba. He would review. He had a chavrusa. He would review the learning with Ravada Barabba before he went there, right? L'shmaite. He would review. He would go over it with Ravada Barabba. This Ravada Barabba who died. Then he would come and give the shiur the kala. Then he would go and give the shiur and go to the kala, go up on the podium and give the shiur. One day, Naktua Rav Papa Ravun Rav Yeshua. Rav Papa and Rav Yeshua, these two rabbis grabbed Ravada Barabba, the Ravada Barabba. They weren't at the seam. When Rava made a seam, according to the preferred shot in Rashi, the second shot, he says that when Rava made a seam on the last parak in Bechoros, and they didn't attend that siyum, and he gave a shiur there. So these two rabbis grabbed Ravada Barabba and begged him, Amulei, Emelon. They told him, Emelon, tell us, Hani Shmaita, the Meiser Behema. The last section in Bechoros, which talks about Meiser Behema, explain to us, Hechia Minu Rava. How did Rava explain all this? Give us a shiur. Can you review for us the shiur? So these two rabbis detained Ravada Barabba and tried to get from him, what Rava said at the shiur. They detained him, and therefore Ravada Barabba did not come to Rav Nachman Yitzchak to review the shiur before Rav Nachman Yitzchak would give his shiur. So Hechem and Rava Amar Lahu. So Ravada Barabba told Rav Papa and Rav Yeshua, this is what he said. And he was going through the whole shiur that Rava, they were reviewing the shiur. Now night was falling for Rav Nachman Yitzchak, and Ravada Barabba didn't come. get up and give the shiur. Denagalan, it's getting dark already. Lama Yosef, why are you sitting here? Amalahu, yes, I'm sitting the commentura la arsei Rav. I'm coming waiting for the beer of Rav. Rav didn't show up. Must be that he died. He said, I'm waiting for his beer. Then a rumor went out. Rav died. When we started probably the Gemara says it was probably through his curse, because he said, I'm waiting for his beer to come. I'm waiting for his funeral procession. So it's probably him who caused it. Rashi says, the Tana said to Ravada, I need mitzvah kanshi if he was mitzvah Ravada, because where is must be that he died. So maybe it was his words that caused it, but it's not clear really what happened. In any case, the bottom line over here is that you can't commit unfair business practices. Right?
We started the with Kinat Sofrim.
Right, Kinat Sofrim.
Different right. Kinat Sofrim.
Yeah.
Better than you, I know more than you.
Yeah. Still applies to Kinat Sofrim Tarvachov, right? Misha Yakosel Samachil. Now here's in case it's hard to understand this without seeing the Gemara. Mishnah says that let's say my wall was near your wall. I shouldn't put another wall there unless I left 4 amas. Now I have to leave 4 amas. We'll see the 4 amas is for treading. The walls were put up above ground, and maybe they didn't have the same building skills that we have today. And they would rely on people to tread around the walls, along the walls, because that would pack the earth very well, and that would give stability to the walls. So he says you got to leave 4 amas when you put up a wall next to somebody else's wall. In other words, you have it says, the Mishnah's strange way it reads, says you have a wall near somebody else's wall. So let's say Shimon has a wall, and you are Reuben, and you put up a wall next to his. You already have a wall next to it. It says if my wall, Reuben's wall, was next to Shimon's wall, and Reuben wants to put up another wall, he shouldn't put up another wall unless he's 4 amas away. What are we talking about? You already have a wall there. So if you have a wall there, how did he put the first one up? Wasn't the first one there 4 amas away? Gemara is going to deal with this. The Mishnah is not clear. Then he says another halach that we already mentioned before. Chalonos, if you have a window, or several windows in your wall, in your building, your house, whatever, and somebody else wants to build another wall near your windows. So whether the wall must be above or below, you got to leave 4 amas. What does that mean, 4 amas? You can't build a wall right next to my window, because if you build it a little bit shorter than my window, you could step on the wall and looking through my window. And if you just make it a little bit higher than my window, you could bend over and look and see in my window. So it's got to be 4 amas distant. In other words, it's got to be the 4 amas above the window, 4 amas below the window, and they connect on opposite my window. Opposite the window, that's to give room, airspace, and for light to come in. That's you have to leave 4 amas. So we see 2 halachas in this Mishnah. Let's deal with the first one. It says if my Reuben's wall was next to Shimon's wall, and now Reuben wants to put up another wall, he has to keep it 4 amas distance. So the Gemara says the kamas, the hechi samach. Where did he put the first wall? You say you have to worry. The second wall has to be next to, has to be 4 amas away from the other guy's wall. So where was the first wall? How did he put it up? If you're coming for the first time, not that you already have a wall there. That's the Pashup Shani Gemara would say now. You don't have a wall. Shimon has a wall. Reuben wants to put up a wall next to his. You can't do it. You can't put up a wall unless it's 4 amas away. That's to allow treading around both for stability of both walls. Shimon's wall is there already, and Reuben's wall allows stability. Maskapla Rava. So Rabbi asks, the Mishnah doesn't say that Reuben didn't have a wall there. The Mishnah says if Reuben's wall was near Shimon's wall, and now Reuben wants to put up another wall, how do? You got to keep 4 amas away. How can you say it means if you're coming to make a wall, you got to keep 4 amas away? The Mishnah says, I already have a wall there, Tani. Elam Rabach Tani. If I have Reuben's wall, Reuben has a wall 4 amas away from Shimon's wall. Binafal, and that wall fell down. Reuben's wall fell down, and now Reuben wants to reconstruct it. You shouldn't put another. It's got to stay the 4 amas away. My timer, the daf shadahocha mali lahasam, because the treading over here is good for that over there too. Meaning you need to have treading between the walls, So that'll be good. Even the treading for this wall will be good for that wall. Says Rashi in the third line in Rashi. This that they tread by foot. Bain snacks on between the two walls. Tamid, what they do there all the time. Moel wells both walls. To make the ground between them harden. So that to make the base of the walls stronger and it won't collapse. So that's what he means. It means if you had a wall there already and it fell down, you can't make it any closer. You have to make it far away so that 4 amos away so that the treading will give stability to both walls.
So it already was close to. Can't build it where it was.
So
you have to move another amo.
So here we're talking about where it was already 4 amos away. If it wasn't 4 amos away, good question. Presumably they were masking to it already. If it was done with permission, then presumably it was done with it. It was already done that way. And then he presume, he had chazaka that he was allowed to do it. They came to some agreement. Then it's probably okay. But if it was 4 amos away, you can't make it any closer. Okay. My time Amrav. That's only the wall of a garden. Because in a garden, there's not a lot of treading. A garden is, whatever they have there, and flowers and fruits and things like that, an orchard. So there's not a lot of treading there. The wall of a chotzer in Balismach, you can make it even closer. Why? Because there's a lot of treading going on there anyway. You don't have to encourage more treading. It makes a difference. In chotzer in Balismach and itself, you can't make it closer than 4 amos. There's really no machlokas here between Rav Oshia and Rav. Why? Are we talking about an old city or a new city? If it's a new city, you need treading. So even if it's at a coastal of a chutzner, you have to allow for 4 amos. If it's an old city, so there's been a lot of treading there already, then only in a gina do you have to allow 4 amos between your wall and his wall. But for a chutzner, you don't. Okay. Tanan, what do we see from our Mishnah, the second part of our Mishnah? Okay, we're not really done yet understanding this. So far, how do we understand the case in the Mishnah? When Reuben's wall was next to Shimon, Reuben's wall fell down, and he wants to rebuild it, he's got to stay 4 amos away. Okay, whether it was for a chutz or a gina, but he's got to stay 4 amos away. Tanan, Mishnah said, you got to leave 4 amos distance, as we said, above, below, or far away. The Tani lot of Bryce has said about that. Why do you have to leave room above? Meaning, if I build a wall opposite your window, I've got to leave 4 amos. Says, above, you got to have it 4 amos higher than your window so that I can't bend over my wall, hang down there, and look and peek into your window. Milamaton, below shlo yamad bira. And if it's below your window, I can't have it 1 or 2 amos below your window because then I can stand on my wall and look inside. And opposite, yes, you have to wait. It shouldn't darken your room. I got to make the wall far enough away, it shouldn't darken the room. Timer shlo yafil. The reason it says over there that why if I make a wall next to your window, next to your wall with your windows in it, the reason is it shouldn't darken it. But it doesn't say anything about treading on it, so it's not much, but you have to allow for treading. That's speaking about, he says, we're speaking about in our Mishnah, now he's explaining the Mishnah is not speaking about where the 2 walls were parallel to one another, but it came on the side, meaning it was perpendicular. Reuben's wall that he's building is not parallel, it's perpendicular. So if it's perpendicular, then there's no issue of treading. Why? Because there's plenty of room to tread there. Shimon's wall is there already. Reuben just made a wall like this. So that little bit, it won't be trodden upon, not so bad, because there'll be plenty of other room to tread there. Whereas my wall is not preventing treading next to your wall, because my wall is not perpendicular to your wall. It's not parallel to your wall. If my wall is parallel to your wall, and it was only 1 or 2 amos away, it wouldn't allow for treading. So he says it has to be 4 amos away. But over here, he says, well, he's not worried. Why aren't you worried about treading? Because over here, you could say our Mishnah is not speaking about where the walls were parallel; they were perpendicular. So my perpendicular wall is not affecting your treading. It might only affect it for the thickness of my wall, because it's only going against a small amount of the area next to your wall. So now we're going to talk about so there's no issue of arba amos there. So how far away do you have to keep? In other words, there's no you don't have to allow for treading because I'm not blocking the treading at all. I'm not making a wall parallel to your wall. I'm making one perpendicular. Okay, so how much do you have to keep away? The Brisa, Rashi explains the Brisa, the Mishnah said you got to stay away 4 4 amas above, below, and opposite. Okay, because there you're speaking what where's parallel. The chalonos that you're talking about chalonos there, but over here then the Brisa says above you should have enough room not to look inside. Below that you should be able to stand on the wall, and opposite just enough that you shouldn't darken it. So how much is that? How much is that? The comma Amar Raviva. So we'll say didn't our Mishnah also say 4 amas? We'll talk the comma in the Brisa. The Brisa doesn't mention how much. Brisa just says the reason is you shouldn't look inside, and the reason for making a wall, for distancing from your window, not above, below, but staying away from your window. How far that distance should be? Enough that it shouldn't darken it. So how much is that? Amar Rabiba Chamua de Ashan Bar Nibach, a strange name. Yiba, the father-in-law of Ashan Bar Nabach, that was his name. Ishmei the Rav. It's the width of the window. If the window was, let's say, 2 feet wide, so you got to leave 2 feet, whatever the width of the window is. I valo makes it. So okay, what does that help? If it's that you're still going to be able to stand on the wall and look down. In other words, you'll be able to peek inside. Elevates is keeping some. In other words, you're saying it's just enough as the width of the window. It doesn't have to be 4 amas. 4 amas is like 8 feet. It doesn't have to. If the windows presumably were much smaller. So if that space was so small, was only like 2 feet or whatever the width of a window, you'd be able to peek down, sit on top of the wall and look down. The Madiras Koslo, you made the top slope. You didn't make the top of the wall flat so that you could sit on it or stand on it and look down, but it was sloped, and as it came to a point, so it wouldn't be conducive to standing on or even leaning on because it was sloped. Madiras Koslo. Ivan Anton Arba Amos. Our Mishnah said that if you make a wall opposite your window, you got to leave 4 amas away, not just enough for the width of the window to keep to allow light in. So here it's speaking in the Mishnah, speaking of 4 amas, because there you're talking about making a wall on 2 sides of the window. If the wall is on 2 sides of the window, then you're right. The wall's on 2 sides of the window. Why? Because it's parallel. Maybe the Mishnah just speak about where it's parallel. In the second part of the Mishnah, talk about the windows. It's either parallel or shnei ksom zeh keneged zeh mishnei tzidei achalon, or maybe you had 2 walls there. Again, here we're going with the idea that the wall that Reuben's putting up is perpendicular to the wall that's already there. So if it's perpendicular and he makes 2 walls on either side of the window, then it's going to be very dark. There won't be any light in there unless he moves further away. How do you get around the problem with looking inside if you only the width of the window? Well, if looking inside, we get around if it's only the width of the window because the top of the wall is not flat, but it's rather sloped, so you wouldn't be able to sit on there. And in our Mishnah, we're talking about where the walls are. You have to stay 4 amas away. That's talking about where you had a wall on either side of the window. So the point is that you have to be very careful not to make the walls, cause the walls to fall down or to lose their structure by allowing for treading. So Gemara said, yeah, but the treading depends. Is it a new city or an old city, and that kind of a thing? What about here? Talk about the Mishnah's mashma. Only you shouldn't darken it, but Mishum Daf Shalo. She says no. If it's perpendicular, then there's no problem of treading because the wall is not parallel. If the wall is not parallel, I'm not blocking anything. I just have let's say the wall, Shimon's wall is 20 feet long, and I put up a wall there 1 foot wide. Okay, so for that foot, it would be hard to tread, but the rest of it you could tread, so it's not going to be a problem of stability for Shimon's wall. So, and when the Mishnah says about leaving 4 amas away, so you shouldn't darken the window, that's where there was a wall on either side. You had 2 perpendicular walls next to Shimon's parallel wall. It's called the wall that was there originally. Windows in a house. The windows in a house, but it's like that's right. The wall of the house. Correct. So in other words, the windows are obviously in a wall next to the house. The point is also that would weaken that too. Yeah.
He's treading on both sides of the wall.
He's treading between the 2 walls.
You have a wall like this, a wall like this. You're leaving space here.
That's right.
Whose property is
they're building it in their own property. Each one is building the wall in their own property.
Splitting his property into two?
No. He's not yet. No, in his own property, he can put a wall there. Yeah, that's right. He could do whatever his purposes are. He could put a wall there. Each one is building the wall in their own property. Still, you cannot put up. If let's say one guy has a wall right on the border of his property, you can't put up a wall right next to it because that will destabilize the other guy's wall. It will destabilize yours too because you won't have any treading. Parallel walls, right? Parallels. Why? Why do you must leave? In other words, the Mishnah's halacha is still there. If you're making a wall parallel to one another, you have to leave room for treading, both for his purposes and for both walls. That's what Rashi said. The Shnei Ksalim, both walls need stability. So you can't put up a wall right next to his wall because even if there's no windows, let's say there's no windows involved, he just has he has a wall and you have a wall. You got to leave room for treading. In the Mishnah, when we said in our Mishnah that the Mishnah's mashma when we talk about the windows, that there is no treading issue. There's no treading issue because they were talking about perpendicular wall.
So that perpendicular
right.
wall is splitting
his own. Yeah, whatever.
He
right.
doesn't have to tread on.
The treading is on both properties. In other words, you have to allow treading on both properties. So if the first guy made a wall on his property, the second guy cannot put up a wall right next to him, even on his own. Right.
It's the
perpendicular one, then there's no treading issue because Reuven will tread in his own property on that land and stabilize Shimon's wall, which was already there. Now, the Gemara says, well, another question. Tashma, in the next mission, we're going to see the next mission in a minute, that says that if you keep a distance, if you put a wall, if you're building a wall next to somebody else's roof gutter, meaning another guy's got he's got a roof on his property, and there's a gutter at the end of the roof that allows the water to go in there and then comes down in a proper way so it doesn't drip along the whole thing. You have to keep your wall away from the other guy's gutter. Dalaramas, why? Person has to be. You have to allow room for him to climb on his ladder to clean out his gutter. In other words, he may need to step on your property to clean out his gutter. So even though it's your property, he's not usurping your property. He just says you have to allow enough room there for him to climb up on a ladder, and so you can't if you're putting up a wall next to his gutter, he won't be able to climb up and clean out his gutter. That's the reason why the Mishnah says you can't do that. But there's no concern about treading. Again, this whole business about shouldn't put up a wall parallel to the other one because of treading. It's not concerned about treading. The only reason is he's got to be able to put up a ladder over there. It's not concerned about treading. So we're speaking about where the roof gutter is on the roof itself is a slanted roof. It's not a flat roof. It's slanted and it overhangs Shimon's roof gutter, and his roof overhangs Reuven's property. Property also somewhat improper, but he's not really hurting his property. If the guy wanted to build a wall there, so it's hanging over. You can walk underneath there. In other words, it's not speaking about where the gutter ends with the roof, with the wall line of Shimon's property. The guy's got a property, or his property, his wall is here, let's say, his wall is along here, and his roof gutter overhangs it a little bit. So if it overhangs a little bit, so we say when you're building a wall over here, you're building a wall next to him, you got to let room for him to clean out his gutter. Why aren't you worried about walking? The answer is walking is also taken care of because the roof gutter overhangs the property, and he could walk along that underneath the roof gutter, underneath the roof line effectively, because it's slanted over a little bit. Now, Marchikan has assumed that shows you apparently that you have to allow people, the ability to walk. Let's say guy's got a wall right on the edge of his property, but in order to take care of the wall, you have to treat it, you have to fix it or something. You have to allow him the ability to walk on your property sometimes to get to his property. Says the Mishnah, you should, let's say somebody has a bird house, you shouldn't put up a ladder next to his birdhouse, right next to it. You got to leave it at least 4 amos away. Let's say 8 feet away. You got to leave it away. So that mongoose or some sort of a rodent shouldn't jump up on the ladder and kill the birds. Okay, so it's another thing, you got to keep that away. In other words, if a guy, he's got a birdhouse and you're putting up a sulam over here for whatever reason, you're putting up a ladder, make sure it's at least 4 amos away. This is the halach that we just mentioned a minute ago. And you have to leave your wall away from the other guy's roof gutter, so you should be able to stand up a ladder there and clean out his gutter. Rav Yossi says, we mentioned him before, that if you have a bore in your property and I plant a tree in my property, it's not my problem. Even though the roots will eventually cause your bore to be deteriorated, to ruin your bore. It's not I put it in my property. One guy can dig here and you can plant over there. You're not worried about that. So Chora, our mission does not go like Rav Yossi, because our mission says, right, that it's not my problem. If I put my my ladder next to your bird thing, if your birdhouse is in your property, my ladder's in my property, it's not my problem. This is more a field time Rav Yossi. Rashi says that most of these Mishnahs fall like Rav Yossi. Just saying, is this Mishnah also not like Rav Yossi? It's more a field time Rav Yossi, even like Rav Yossi. Rav Ashi, Rav Kana, when I was at Rav Kana's yeshiva, he said, Motor Rav Yossi begirti day. Rav Yossi's motor when it's direct damage, my own arrow, so to speak. When you put the ladder over there, the monochle, once you put the ladder, Yasvi before, maybe the mongoose is sitting in the little hole there waiting to be able to get an opportunity to jump up the ladder and kill the birds, or eat the birds, whatever you're going to bakafsa. So in other words, he's mode over here where it's direct damage. When I plant a tree and the damage is going to be done years later, that's not so direct. Over here, I put up the ladder and the animal jumps right up the ladder and kills the birds. That's already more of a direct damage. So I didn't do the damage. The animal did the damage. It's still only indirect. Even though we did it, that you're not chayiv to pay. Even I wouldn't have to be chayiv to pay for the birds if I put the ladder and the animal jumped up on the ladder and killed the birds. Maybe I wouldn't have to pay, but it's still usher. It's still indirect damage. Is still forbidden. Rav Yossi story. Rav Yossi he had some small date trees. He had some date trees. And bloodletters, doctors. That's was the medicine man in those days was a bloodletter, right? So they would sit under those trees, and apparently Rabbi Yosef allowed them to do that. Either they bought that right from him, or he granted them that right. And they would come, the Yosefite side, they would sit under the shade of those trees, and do their work. They would let blood. That was where they set up shop, underneath his tree. And then what happened was there would be a lot of blood on the ground, right? And they would let blood there. Also, the ravens would come. They would slurp up the blood. And then what happened was these doctors would chase the ravens away. They would go up on the trees, on these date trees, and they would damage the dates. Rav Yosef says, get rid of your croakers from here. In other words, get out of here. Don't look what you're doing. You're bringing these ravens over here, causing me damage. It's only indirect damage. They're not doing it themselves, right? It's indirect because they're letting blood there, and the ravens are coming and they're shooing them away. They go up on the roof. The same thing. The same thing we just did before. That Rav Tuvi said that Rama Zik is also indirect damage. But what do you mean va'achziklu? Apparently, Rav Yosef had given them a chazaka. He gave them the right to let let blood there. He gave them that right. Either they bought it from him or he granted it to them, and they were there maybe for 3 years. As Tosus that he granted them that right. There's no considered a chazaka when it comes to damage, because he could always say, "I thought I could handle it. I don't mind if you sit under the trees and do your work. I didn't know it's going to cause me damage." There's no chazaka. That's not chazaka. Rav Mari say, that's if it's smoke damage, or basic. He said if somebody puts up a bathroom there, these things are intolerable, disgusting, and cause damage, irritation, etc. Maybe that's what he means by real chazak nezikin. Here we're just talking about it's very, very indirect. The ravens go, some of them they go up there, they eat some of the dates, whatever. I am very sensitive, and I don't like these ravens here. This is like smoke or a bathroom. Setting up a bathroom, these ravens. So for me, he said that I'm shooing them away, and the chazaka is meaningless. But the point is that even grama ben azikim zasra, even if you don't have to pay for it, you didn't do the damage directly. Both in the Mishnah, where the mongoose was doing damage to the birds, and in the case here where these ravens did damage to the dace, it wasn't your direct damage; it was indirect. Still, grama ben azikim is usher. All right, we'll pick it up from the Mishnah tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody.